about, the regulations that y'all have on how much fertilizer you can put out. We're starting to see that in the Midwest now. It's slow, but y'all are closer to Washington, so y'all have to be more highly watched. So one of the things that we will talk about is a complete program of using biology to release what you have in the soil, but also supplementing that with liquid fertility, again, so you can reduce the amount of dry fertilizer. In the state of Ohio, I don't know how y'all are, but if you have over 20 parts per million of phosphorus, you can't put out DAP. Is it that way in Virginia? Yeah?
If we're very high, 55 parts per million, we've got to develop a phosphorus-based nutrient management plan.
Really?
Which means you can only put out what you're removing.
Yeah, yeah. So with the biology and with what we're going to talk about in chemistry, we've eliminated DAP. And we've still increased the amount of DAP. And we'll be able to show you how and why. And then that in turn helps pay for a lot of our program. And then we'll talk about potassium as well on how we're able to do that through different modes. But again, periodic table. We've all seen it. This is all we do. This is not snake oil, right? And that's what I had to finally get my mind past. We just talked about biology. That's not snake oil. This is not snake oil either. This is simple biology. There's calcium. There's potassium. They're right beside each other. There's magnesium. So Bert's going to talk about this big brown circle.
This is a Mulder's chart. Basically, this was designed to show you what fertilizers or nutrients work together or drive one another in a positive fashion versus the ones that work against each other. So one of the things that you want to take a look at, this is the biggest thing that we have, that we run into is that when the magnesium and the calcium, where's calcium? Calcium get out of whack, your soil gets locked up, gets tight, hard as a brick bat. That's because they're antagonistic. Same thing with calcium and phosphorus. Calcium can inhibit, if you have too high calcium values, it can inhibit the amount of phosphorus that's available. The other way around too, if you have too high phosphorus values, you can inhibit the amount of calcium that the plants take up. All these things affect pH, nutrient absorption, and everything else. Like I said, the dark lines are things that stimulate one another. Nitrogen and magnesium, they stimulate one another. Phosphorus and magnesium will stimulate one another. The little lines are antagonistic. So that means they work against each other. Calcium and magnesium work against each other. Which is why when we talk about soil tests, we want complete soil tests so that we can look at this little area right over here. All this other stuff is important, don't get me wrong, but this area right here can tell me more about what's going on your farm than just about anything else.
How many of y'all got base saturations on your soil test?
Yeah, but does these soil tests actually tell you what's available to the plant, or just tells you what's in the dirt?
So,
That's a very good question.
if you get a complete soil test here, the P1 is considered a weak extraction. That uses acids that closely approximate what goes on in the soil by the plant and by the critters that live around the roots that are capable of freeing up phosphorus from the soil and making it available to the plant. So when you look at the parts per million on the P1, that is about as close as we're going to get to what would be considered available. These other values, the P2, that's a strong extraction. We like to use it because it helps us determine roughly how effective microbes are gonna be in that environment, because they're really gonna get to work, start chipping that off and making that plant available. Everything else is in parts per million and is assumed the majority of it is available if your soil's in balance, which is why the base saturations are exceedingly important.
If you're not getting a base saturation on your current soil test, I highly recommend, even if you don't do any business with us at all, I highly recommend you get it. It is the #1 thing you can do. So how many people agree with this statement? I lime because of the pH, right? That's what we do, right? Wrong. Because what happens if your pH, like this guy, this is not a good example, but it's 5.8, but I had this happen to me, but your base saturation of calcium, which we want at 70, is 80. You know what happens? The retailer says, hey, you need a lime because your pH is 5.8, so you lime, which increases your base saturation of calcium, which ties up your phosphorus, which decreases your phosphorus, so he sells you more DAP.
It's a vicious cycle.
Yeah, so you've got to have this, because this is where you want to start before you ever put out lime. That doesn't happen a whole lot, but it does happen probably 20 to 30% of the times the soil tests that we see. So please get this before you ever put lime out, because you could be jacking up your soil worse and causing yourself to tie up more phosphorus, and then causing yourself to buy more phosphorus. And then if you buy more phosphorus and you put it out with a base saturation of calcium, it doesn't do any good anyway. You just dump it in the ditch. This is where it goes back to what we're talking about runoff of phosphorus. If your soil can't hold it because your base saturations are messed up, it ends up in the ditch, which ends up in the river, which gets all the environmentalists all pissed off, and then we're all in trouble.
Couple of things to note here. These values that are in red, it's our, not even, I mean, I can't pull a table out and show you anything, but what the agronomy team at Concept Agritech like to see minimum values or value ranges when we look at the soil test. We like to see your P1 rate over 25, K rate over 125. When you look at your base saturations, we like to see the K between 4 and 6%, the mag between 10 and 15, the calcium between 68 and 75. We like to see zero hydrogen, because hydrogen, what's pH? The negative log of the concentration of the hydrogen ions. The higher this value is, the lower your pH is going to be. And then we like to see sodium at 0.5 or less. Plants have to have some sodium, not a lot. Coming down here, sulfur on 20 plus, zinc 5, 25 on manganese, 1 copper, 1 boron. These can all be managed very well with simple additions in either ground applied or foliar applied technology. You can supplement nutrition with these fairly easy. These are a little more difficult, which is why bringing your soil into balance and making sure they're available and increasing those values is so critical. Remember we talked about the biology and when they burp CO2 and they tie up hydrogen? The top line is no treatment. The bottom line was treatment. One application knocked the hydrogen concentration almost down by 2 full points. That's one application with the micro for that growing season.
And you can see when we knock down the hydrogen, so all this on a base saturation will always equal 100%. So you add these up, it'll equal 100, right, between these four. So we decrease the hydrogen, which we don't really want. So guess what? It opened up potassium, which we do want. It almost doubled our available potassium right off the bat in one application. The other thing it did, guess what? We put phosphorus releasing bacteria. Guess what it did? It it releases phosphorus. This is the one I told you about. I was shocked. We almost doubled our available phosphorus. And then the biologist goes, well, what do you think was gonna happen? You know? And so that's what you see. And almost every nutrient is more available when you have healthier biological soil because it's doing what it's supposed to be doing.
Another thing to take a look at, we talked about organic matter, increasing it. We only raised it 1/10 of a point. And that's not much. Well, actually, that's a lot.
That's 10%.
That's 10%. We also increased the CEC. Now, I don't know if you remember, but the CEC, cation exchange capacity, that's the soil's gas tank. The better the value is here, the more ability the soil has to hold on to nutrients. You start hitting CECs 5 and below, you got a pretty sandy soil. Can't hold on to a whole lot, which means you got to spoon feed that crop all season long. You get into the clays and you start getting CECs of 25 and above, it can hold on to it, but there is a point at which it holds on to everything, and then you have to have microbes to be able to come in and free it up so your plant can take it.
So this is where we start at Concept Ag. With any customer, we start with the soil test. And if you don't have base saturation in your soil test, we actually will try to help you get it. Dale said he would do all the soil testing. Right, Dale?
Oh, I don't remember that part of the conversation, but, we'll work something out.
We'll work something out. But this is where we start. So when we start here, then we're going to look at things like this and see first where we're going to spend your money, right? Because it's all about return on investment. A lot of times, we would like this guy. He needs lime. The reason he needs lime is not so much this, it's this. We got to get this base saturation of calcium up, right? So we're recommending lime. We don't sell lime. We're also going to recommend some DAP because we need this up to 25. And yeah, we're going to put some biology and some liquid phosphorus, but really, he needs some DAP. And he sure as heck needs some potash. So we're going to do a regimen of some potash, but we're also going to throw some of our foliar potassium in there and maybe a side dress of potassium to spoon feed the potassium, just like you spoon feed nitrogen. We're going to spoon feed the potassium. So we are going to be recommending a lot of these things. A lot of times we'll see low magnesium. We'll be recommending K-Mac. So we're going to be recommending a lot of things that we don't sell to help our farmers make a better return on investment, make a profit. Because at the end of the day, we're actually all my sales guys, all my agronomy team, every one of us come from farmers. We're all farm background. We all came from a farm.
One thing to note on here, if we're going to recommend lime, we're going to recommend the correct lime. Yes, we need calcium, but we do not need dolomitic lime. You throw dolomitic lime out there and you start pushing this number beyond 15, guess what? Remember the molar chart? Mag's going to start negatively impacting calcium, making the ground tighter, harder. So they're near about where we want it. So we'd be recommending you try to find a high calcitic line that has a low mag component to it so that you actually get calcium out in the field and not mess up, do no harm, not mess up your mag.
Because in a lot of areas you may have just red lime around. I don't know what kind y'all have around here. But a guy would say, retailer says, oh, what's lime? And he throws out red lime. Well, guess what? He just jacked up his magnesium. So no, you need to wait. We need to get the calcium out.
So, again, like Trey said, it's important the base saturations add up to 100. And you want the majority of that 100% to be in these three quadrants right here, with this being very low and this being around that.
And if you'd like a copy of this, we definitely can get this to Dale and get copies of it. We probably should have put it in the book without thinking about it, but that's all right. We're first time out, so we'll learn. We'll do better next time.
It's great
We
information.
do have a copy of this. You got a copy of the molar chart, so we can get you all that.
And we're going to show you something that has been around since the 1800s.
1845, I think, wasn't it?
18, this is the man's lifespan, 1803 to 1873.
Yep.
That's how you have to look at everything. And it's the law of minimum. If you want to maintain yield, you want to have all of these staves as high up as possible because yield's inside it. The one that you're deficient on is going to be the one where you lose yield, whatever it may be. That's why that soil test on the previous slide is exceedingly important, because it gives us a snapshot of what is there, what is available, what we have to work with. That's the medium you grow your crop in. And if it's not at optimum, one of these stages is going to be too low, and regardless of how much you put everything else up, if you don't affect the one that's allowing the yield to leak out, you'll never hit your yield goal. You'll never increase.
And this is why we really customize our programs for everybody, because in here real quickly, I've heard, tobacco and cotton, or not cotton, but corn and beans, and, there's a lot of different crops, right? And we're from, California to North Carolina and everywhere in between, so we're all over, and everybody in here farms different, everybody's soil's different. So there's not a one-stop shop, hey, I got this miracle go-go juice that's gonna, give me 20 bushels of beans every time. No, because the recommendation I make for your farm is gonna be totally different than the recommendation I make for your farm, based on your soil test, based on your budget, based on your crop, based on your yield goals. And based on what is the number one limiting factor on your farm not getting you to the ROI that you need.
Again, it's a simple slide, but it really speaks very loudly when you start to take a look at it and pay attention to what it's actually saying. Again, we're not going to be completely product driven here, but we want to share some things with you. Like Trey said, it's very rare do you have somebody that uses zero dry. And we've got a few guys that have been on our program for multiple years, and they've converted over to all liquid. It doesn't mean they'll never use dry, but they had a good bank, and they've been managing everything very well with, the complete program. Our products are far and away better than generic blends that you find out there. There's Total Phos, there's Starter 2020. Total Phos is typically for your corn, your crops that can handle a little bit more salt in furrow. Starter 2020 are for crops that can't handle it, like cotton and soybeans. There's no nitrogen component in the Starter 2020, whereas the Total Phos is an 829.2, and so it has some nitrogen in it. Micropack, micronutrients. There was a recent poll, and the three largest soil testing facilities in the United States were polled to try to find out what was the most common thing that they found in a soil test that was lacking. And all three of them came back with the same response. Over 95% of all the soil tests that come into the laboratories are deficient in micronutrients. Now let that sink in. Yes, they're called micronutrients because you don't need them but in micro quantities. But some of those micronutrients are essential for germination, seedling development, grain field, all of these things that we take for granted. But if you're deficient in them, you're going to limit the performance of your crop. And in Concept Z9. These are all can be applied in fur or banded application.
So like we were talking about phosphorus, so here's where it all kind of comes to fruition. So say you got a phosphorus P1 level of 40, like we talked about, all right? So you give me our biology that has all these phosphorus-releasing bacteria, give me Total Phos at 4 or 5 gallons, you do not need that. And not only will you not need that, I can raise 270, 80 bushel corn like that all day long and increase the phosphorus level. I know that sounds crazy, but it's just done it over and over. And when you've done it for 6 years and it keeps working everywhere across the nation, that's just a fact. That's just the way it is. And then you don't have to put the DAPs. Then you get the EPA off your fanny as well. But basically, we can't do that without starting with the soil test, number 1. And then finding out what your yield goals are, number 2. And then that's how this whole program of agronomy, chemistry, biology comes into fruition. We do that, I just saved you money. Your DAP would cost more than that program. And then we throw the micronutrient package in there with it, based again on your soil test. Are you low in zinc, are you high in zinc? You know, what do you need?
This is our total phos, like I said, it's an 829.2 against some of these generic starters that are out on the market. Our total phos is a highly refined premium starter fertilizer. It's a 50-50 blend of ortho and polyphosphorus. So you have some immediately available right there, ready to go. And then the poly component of it is available later on as demand increases through germination and seedling development. You can see this is just root mass comparisons of starter fertilizer. I believe all of them are same gallons.
Oh yeah, 3 gallons.
3 gallons each. You see the check there that had no starter. Starters work, but you can see that there's a big difference with the total phos over the 1034.0, which is almost 100% poly, and then the 624.6. Again, this is where starters pay off. That's total phos.
So the thing that I liked about, we all looked at this picture last night, it was about, what, midnight when we looked at the picture? We were up late burning the midnight oil. And the thing that we've learned, and we actually learned it, helped Kyle over here, is the most important part of your time in your corn life, for example, is V4. That's when girth is being determined. So if you miss that and that corn is yellow or it's, you know, stressed at all at V4, it's going to go, I'm not happy, I'm going to make 14 around, right? And once it's made 14 around, you just reduce that yield and you will not get it back. You will not, the ear's not going to, I mean, it may get longer a little bit, but it's not going to get this long. It's not, you cannot replace the amount. So you've got to get that plant started off right. It's got to be happy at V4. And that starts off by starting the plant off right with the right biology, with phosphorus, with the micronutrient package in it. And if you're spraying your corn with a herbicide early, what's saying, you know, is to make sure that you spray that herbicide before V4 if all possible. Because you want to put a little bit of micronutrients in there, and a little bit of nitrogen and phosphorus, and definitely some carbon sources to make that plant as happy as it can. Basically what I was told is you want to trick that plant into thinking everything's perfect, so it's going to put 18, 20 around. And we learned that from North Carolina. High yield is the 370 bushel dryland corn from Jamie. Something stupid.
It was 3, wasn't that high.
Anyway, it's over 300 bushel dryland corn. So one of the things that you will find out about us as you get to know us better, I think this year we took 12 of the state's high yielding contests. We were in at least the top 3 in beans, in corn, and then several more in beans. A lot of these, what we call celebrity guys, are using our product, and it's been really neat. But again, you got to get it started off. Don't learn anything today. Get the corn started off right so it's ready to go with V4. Because if you miss that, you know, you've lost your yield potential.
And the efficiency contest too,
Yeah.
as far as input dollars. And some of the same guys that were winning the yield contest as far as just straight yield on the same program in the same field, the same test acres, they were winning awards for efficiency as far as the fewest dollars of input per bushel. So you can make very high yields and some of the highest yields in the state and also have some of the cheapest yields in the state.
Lowest input cost. All right, so we keep talking about the comprehensive program. Next, we're going to move into our suite of foliar products with this technology that we call Transmax. What is it? It's systemic translocation of plant nutrition. Everybody in here knows how Roundup works, right? Even Trey mentioned it before. You spray it on the leaf surface, it gets taken in through the leaf tissue, it moves down to the root, and Roundup kills from the root up. Basically, we took the idea of how Roundup moves the glyphosate molecule, which is what does the killing, and we attached nutrition to it. So what that means is that we can get nutrients to translocate through the entire plant. Nutrients that typically are not taken up in a foliar capacity, either efficiently or at all. They remain in the plant longer for sustained plant feeding. We've done this, we've tested it on dryland soybeans, where we made a Calbor application, which is a Transmax product, and compared it to a quart of 10% gradic acid. Put the Calbor out in a pint. Did it on dryland beans because we wanted to see what was going to happen every time there was a growth event. Well, every time there was a rain or a shower and that plant went into a growth phase, we went out and pulled tissue samples. And at the end of the season, we lined up the tissue samples, and what we saw was the initial sample on the untreated, or the treated with the boratic acid, the quart of B10, you start out with a high boron value. But every time there was a growth event, that concentration of boron in that tissue steadily went down. On the Calbor, you started out with a high value, and then every time there was a growth event, you saw a spike in both calcium and boron. Because the new tissue, which is where you pull your tissue samples from, had it supplied to it. The boron from the B10 did not move up and down and remain in the plant. It got utilized at that location, that growth stage the plant was at when the application was made, and didn't go anywhere else. The Calbor, the Transmax products, stayed in the plant, moved around until the plant had a need for it. When it hit that growth event, boom, we saw a spike. The funny thing was, to get that 600 times is we did the math on it. So we put, Calbor has 3% boron, so that's a third of the rate of 10%, a third of the concentration. It went out at a pint instead of a quart, so that's half the rate. So if you do the math on that, that's 600 times more efficient. It's pretty impressive. What does that mean? You decrease the amount of rates that you use, which means that if you're on a budget as far as the number of gallons per acre that you can put out because you don't want to make more fill-ups, this is the ticket. And you get what you pay for. You pay for that quart of 10% boratic acid that doesn't have Transmax technology in it. You get the activity for that boron within 10 days after you apply it, and that's it. Calbor, you get 600 times more boron available to that plant, and you get it for a longer time period. Ultimate goal is to increase your levels in the fruit/grain.
So Bert mentioned about translocation. So what was interesting is the University of Georgia, we had Calbor, right? And most everybody knows you can spray all the calcium you want to on a plant. It's not going to get in the plant. The University of Georgia told us we were crazy. You cannot spray calcium and get it in the plant. So we did it with peanuts, right? So there's a nut down here underneath the ground. Spray Calbor, we increased the calcium in the nut and the shell by 28%. So that proved that we were getting it in the plant. The other thing is it stays in the xylem and phloem until it's ready to be used. I was with a farmer in northern Indiana, and I was telling him about this, and he goes, that makes total sense. I was like, why? And he pulled this spreadsheet up. All this tissue tests he put on a spreadsheet, and he would show a boron deficiency, is what we were talking about. And so he put boron out. He sprayed his leaf with boron. 4 days later, he came back, took the leaf off, and he sent it off to basically prove it himself that he sprayed boron on it, I guess. And guess what? He says, I never get a yield response. You know why? Because it's not here. Because it's got to be in here to go to the fruit. Unless you're harvesting the leaf for boron, it doesn't make a hill of beans. You got to get it in here so it can go there. You got to get the calcium in here so it can go here. You got to get the calcium in the fruit to increase the test weight on soybean. We can increase the test weight on soybean 2 to 5 points. That's a lot. By increasing the calcium in fruit. Only way you can do it. Click. We're 30 minutes away from lunch and I'm not standing in the way.
Okay. So, mention these products, Calvor, Micro 8. The Micro 8 has currently 8 essential micronutrients that can be delivered to the plant with the Transmax technology.
We have several more now that we've got the technology. Now we're putting it in zinc, manganese, and straight boron. We'll have a lot more product.
This is just a breakdown on before and after of what Micro 8 does. This is tissue test values. So you can see the amount of increase that you get with a pint per acre application. And this was pulled, that 11 days after application?
5 days.
5 days.
So what we've gone to now, since we have the Transmax, pull the leaves off, we send them off, and we take the stem and roots and send them off. Because it's in the leaves, who really cares? It's in the stem, that's where we want it. Gotta get it in the stem.
Talking about the benefits of having calcium in the plants, you can see this is Calvor. One of the things that Calvor's good at is if you got all these little blisters here, but you wind up with a lot of cob showing, you're out of boron. See Calvor filled out closer to the end. Bigger ears, this is also much better test weight. And that was applied at, right at tassel shot with fungicide.
Yep.
This is an infrared picture that shows you what a field that's treated looks like. The middle portion that's glowing really, really bright means those plants are really, really hot. The plants on either side are much cooler. That's the calcium component in the boron. Not only does it help with test weight and things like that, but it's architectural, gives you bigger, thicker cell walls, which means you can hold on to more water, which means that plant runs cooler and can respire better at night and cool itself off. And in any plant, if the internal temperature gets above 95 degrees, you start to experience pollen sterility. So that's why having plants being able to run cool are important.
So that's drought resistance.
It does help, absolutely. So what we say is, we use a lot of it out in Arizona, the stuff where it's like 118 when we got off, and there was a 9-degree difference in the cotton tissue from this row to that row.
Does it work on all plants the same way?
Oh, absolutely, because
Yeah.
it's just the calcium content in it and just the health of the plant. And that basically, if you have a healthy plant, it's gonna respirate correctly, and it's gonna be cooler. So what we have literally is a lot of guys, like you see your forecast coming up, that you're fixing to have a week 100-degree weather, they'll run out there and spray Calvor on it. We have a new product called Stress Tech that also helps. We just launched it this fall. It's not even in our show, but we're basically coming up with a package that's really a stress mitigator that when, hey, I see this forecast, we got 100-degree weather coming up, let's get out there and spray that to help mitigate that. Now, does it make it drought resistant like a cactus? No, sir.
All right, but going back to tobacco, tobacco will sunbake and blister in hot sun. Will this help prevent that?
Yes, sir. Because the reason why you get blistering in tobacco is that portion of the leaf that's arced and intercepting the majority of the UV light, those cells are thin. By increasing the thickness of those cell walls, that's more water that the UV light has to penetrate through, so that's less damage the UV light does to the internal portion of that cell, which means that you get less sunburn. We've seen that in bell peppers, we've seen it in tomatoes, we've seen it in regular peppers, anything like that in greens. So by increasing the architectural component of those cell walls, you cut down on sunburn and those hot spots like that.
And we are on a lot of tobacco in North Carolina and Kentucky. So we do a lot of business with tobacco guys, and they really like our product. It does really well. I mean, I know y'all seen a lot, you know, and I don't know anything about tobacco at all. Somebody asked me about organic product for tobacco, and I was like, why would you use an organic product for tobacco when you're gonna smoke a cigarette? For health reasons?
You got a very good point there.
But hey, I'll come up with one if they wanna buy it, I don't care.
Again, we're not trying to make this product driven, but we have other foliar products there. The total 10 is a 10% slow release nitrogen coupled with 10% potassium acetate with a 40% boron. So you got a 1-to-1 nitrogen potassium ratio and the most efficient potassium that you can apply in foliar matter, which is potassium acetate. We have foliar K, which is just a straight potassium acetate. We've got studies done on a variety of crops, particularly cotton, where applications of foliar K have increased yield during peak demand times, like peak blooms and whatnot. It also does a really good job on corn and wheat.
How many of y'all ever sprayed potassium foliar? Anybody? Do you know if it's potassium acetate or not? It is? Good. Because if it's not, make sure it is. If anybody ever tries to sell you potassium for foliar and it's not potassium acetate, don't give them your money because it will not get in the plant. That's why we go with potassium acetate. It's the only, I mean, if you don't buy it from us, buy potassium acetate from somebody because it's the only one that will go in the plant. So that's a fact.
Foliar RX is a really, really good plant health additive. We've seen tremendous responses in plant health and yield advantages in a multitude of crops with Foliar RX applied at different stages. Foliar RX is one of the products in combination when Trey was talking about supercharging that corn D3. Come in with the Foliar RX, your Sweet Success and the Fulvic Force 8, and you supercharge that plant and food it into believing it has a luxury amount of nutrients available, so it sets as many rounds as its genetic potential is. Concept B10, we're like everybody, we sell 10% boric acid. Some people want that, live by it, love it. We sell it.
We actually moved most of the concept G10 actually over to side dress now. So we use the Calvor as a foliar, even for boron. And then we take the B10, we'll put it in the Tuba 0 or Tuba 2, or we'll put boron and a quart in our side dress, and even wide drop real late. And we've actually seen some really good results out of it. But if we can get that soluble boron down here closer to the roots, we've actually had better results than spraying on the leaf, because it doesn't seem to do a whole lot of good spraying on the leaf.
Right. You see Fulvic Force 8 up there again. We had it in the microbial catalyst. Fulvic Force 8 in this capacity is a plant health thing. It is I guess you could say it's a superior surfactant.
I wanted to call it super surfactant. So what we did basically is we kind of accidentally ran into that we had a surfactant. We really didn't know we had a surfactant. We were using it to feed the plant. You know, folic is a really good plant food, gives the carbon sources and all that energy. But what we found out is it really on fungicides and herbicides, it helped the plant. So the weed, you give it an energy source. So the weed took off growing. When the weed takes off growing, guess what? It sucks in the herbicide, kills it faster. Everybody's, when a drought, you don't spray a herbicide. Why? Because the weed's not growing. So what we did is we made the weed grow, killed it faster. The other cool thing is fulvic is a really small particle. And what it does is it'll attach to a fungicide. And so when we spray it with a fungicide, it gets the fungicide into the plant faster and better. There's really good synergies between them. So we basically replaced all of our crop oil, all of our AMS, and all of our non-ionic surfactant with Fulvic Force 8. And so I had this really big farmer in Illinois, and then one in southern Indiana, use it, and one of them put it up against LI 700, a Loveland product that CPS, now Nutria sells. And I just wanted to know if it would kill as well. Well, he goes, I said, how'd it work for you? He goes, I got a 3-bushel yield advantage. And I was like, I didn't ask for yield, I just wanted to know if it killed as well. And he's like, I did. He said, you can see it on the yield map. And because basically what he was doing is that it not only helped kill better, but it also fed that plant and it helped it metabolize the soybeans, helped it metabolize the herbicide he's putting out. Guys in Indiana had 2 bushels on soybeans, so a benefit. And the thing about it is, it costs about what the normal surfactant does. So if you're gonna use a surfactant, might as well have a plant-based food surfactant. You get 2 birds with 1 stone.
Side dress products, this year Dale saw a lot of very good data with Concept S17. It is a sulfur stabilizer, 17% sulfur, but it also has some secret sauce in it that makes it stand out head and shoulders above any other sulfur additive that you can put in to stabilize nitrogen. Concept K13 is 13% potassium. You can mix 1-to-1 with nitrogen going out in a side dress or wide drop application, especially on these sandier grounds where you can't hold on to a lot of potash, but you need to get that potash out there. You can put it out with your nitrogen. Total Cal is 10% calcium chloride. It is a nitrogen safener and stabilizer as well. It mixes at a 1-to-10 ratio with nitrogen. That's a very good way of getting soluble calcium to the plant, help stabilize your nitrogen and safen it as well, cut back on fire.
So on the S17, a little bit, to elaborate a little bit more on that, a lot of people use nitrogen stabilizers like Nutrisphere and Agritane, if you've heard of them or use them. They're formaldehyde based. The way that they stabilize is they kill your beneficial nitrogen fixing bacteria. That's not really stabilizing nothing, that's just killing, the bacteria so it won't release the nitrogen. So basically what we've done is we've made an organic nitrogen stabilizer that basically, in a lack of a better word, kind of encapsulates the nitrogen into a carbon. And then the way it's then it's stabilized, and then that carbon has to break down, and it's broken down by the plant and the roots sucking in the carbon, therefore sucking in the nitrogen when it's needed. So that's kind of how we stabilize it from actually an Omri approved nitrogen stabilizer, but we put that in with the S17. And I know Dale's had some phenomenal yield results out of it.
And these are some graphs on some things that were done here in Virginia this year. You can see this silage trial, control values versus the Concept Agritech program values. So, the numbers speak for themselves. You can see where, the micronutrients and the S17 along with the microbes really did a fantastic job there in creating the dry, the dry matter tons per acre. The bunch of bugs above the micropack, the S17 and Calgor gave us a larger tons per acre, but the dry matter, for whatever reason, wasn't correspondingly as we predicted.
Bert,
That's data.
everybody knows how much it rained this year. We had 94 inches of rain and measured at the landfill in Rocky Mount in 2018. We were not expecting to get great results with our banded nitrogen this year as a result of that, but we were very amazed that we got the results that we did, and so our confidence level is very high with Concept S17 going into 2019. So we're planning to stock that bulk this year as a result of that.
Remember how many gallons S17 will put out?
It was 2 gallon per acre rate, right? With about 44 units of, was it 30% UAN?
Yeah, 32.
32, okay.
When we get into the higher yielding environments, which you need to try, 5 gallons of S17. For some reason, there is the organic stuff that we put in there, at that 5 gallon rate, we get a massive kick. And so when you put out nitrogen, everybody knows there's kind of a plateau, right, on corn. So I hit this 200, I'm trying to hit 200 bushel corn, and about that 180 units of nitrogen is about as much as I can go to get an ROI. Any more than that, I really don't get any yield kick. The reason is you're not putting enough potassium or calcium and sulfur in there, because you've got to have the corresponding amount of calcium, of sulfur and potassium, and then that number goes up. Because we're doing business with a lot of guys that are well over 250 bushel corn, well over. And that's the one biggest thing we probably learned this year, is they were at that peak, and they couldn't put any more nitrogen out, that wasn't helping yield. But when we put a soluble potassium and a soluble sulfur, and with the organics, boom, through the roof. Really neat. We had some 30 bushel yield increases on corn that was already making 270 bushels from that one application.
One thing that we found is that all of these guys are between 0.8 and 0.84 pounds of nitrogen per bushel of corn that they produce, which is exceedingly efficient. They're just about to the point where they can't drive that efficiency rating any lower. It's about as good as it's going. This is some Bunch of Bugs ST data from North Carolina and Mississippi. This was in the product guide. You can see here that we have our ROI calculated. It's hard to argue with numbers like that.
You probably got to read them to us, Bert. I don't think everybody can see those.
So these two in North Carolina were done over in Pamlico County. The field up top that you got about 10 bushels difference was in corn the year prior. The one here that had 6 bushels difference was beans behind beans. And the reason why is that you had some resident or native nitrogen-fixing bacteria hanging around in there. So, but you see where you went into an environment where you didn't have any, it was much bigger. You're looking at 32.2 versus 42.2. This is just a seed treatment, nothing else. So, you know, at the 32.2 bushels, he made, you know, $314.15 an acre. With the Bunch of Bugs ST, he was $397.27. Here, the difference wasn't as great because the yield advantage wasn't as much. Here in Mississippi, you see it was $289.58 compared to $353.10.
Yeah, you're not as much as still $40 an acre profit.
Yeah. So last year was our 3rd year having it tried. This is a trend line. We started out at around 5 or 5.6 or 5.4 bushels first year, and we're up almost 6 bushels over 3 years now. That's all those data points come together. This was by far this year. This was the worst year. When I got the data package back from the cooperator, every day they did an environmental observation, it showed rain. And, you know, you're only talking about being able to put a finite amount of microbes on the surface of a seed. So when you got that much rain, saturated soils tended to work against them, but they still gave 1.2 bushels better than untreated. And even at $9.50 soybeans for around half a bushel is what it costs to put the treatment on, you're still making money.
So you figure we're making about 6, cost you about half a bushel, so you got, just rough figure, we got 9, 10, you're averaging $50 net ROI on that one product. And by the way, Dale has a seed treatment.
How about that?
And he'll treat anybody's beans.
Right, and we can do fungicide in addition to Bugs ST with that treater out there. So if you get the whole package, it's $8. If you just get the Bugs ST, it's $4.
Again, this shows the difference in Calvor treated soybeans versus untreated. There was a 3 bushel advantage in soybeans. It was just one application. And that netted the grower $23.44 an acre. So, you know, not a bad trade.
That all last,
No,
403%.
no,
That's Mississippi math. You do that?
no. So here we have untreated versus, the seed treatment plus micro 8. Again, this was done this year in the high rain environment. You see untreated chips, 71.7. The combination of the seed treatment plus the micro 8 at V3, and that was all they did to it, different. 79.3. It's pretty good money back right there.
And that's about a $10 cold treatment. We got 8 bushels, so made $70 an acre. This is where we go back to the ROI. We do this all day long.
This was another study. We wanted to take a look at what foliars can do. We didn't have the microbes in on this for whatever reason. I think maybe because there was some cross wires and setting up protocols, but needless to say, it's good data. Untreated check, micro 8 V3, cowboard R3, pint each, 71.7 versus 82.9. Pretty impressive.
And those are both Transmax technologies. That's the difference of getting the nutrients into the plant as opposed to just spraying on the leaf.
And then we got a little section here. We can go through this pretty quick. These are some people that have been using our products and taking advantage of our agronomic assistance. Nelson Crow's the first man in the state of Arkansas to break the 100 bushel barrier on soybeans. And we've worked with him now for 4 years, 5 years.
Yep.
He's a good individual. He doesn't need a lot of hand holding. He pretty much calls and tells us what he needs, and by God, we figure out a way to make it happen. The mowers, that's the number 2 high yield soybean winner in the state of North Carolina. They're, what county is that?
Rowan?
Rowan?
Yeah.
That's actually not very far from here at all.
Did we take the 1, 2, and 3 in North Carolina?
We would have if North Carolina split up into irrigated.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Because those are non-irrigated, and second's non-irrigated, and third was not, fourth was non-irrigated. But number 1 was, big guy in the western part of the state.
So we took 2, 3, and 4. Well, that ain't bad.
They use the full program too. This is the Gardners in Wynn, Arkansas. They've been with us for 3 years, and they like what we give them. This is Lane Miles of McGee, Arkansas. His family is in the high yield competitions.
That Matt?
Matt's son, yes, Matt Miles' son.
So they're one of those celebrity farmers. And have y'all ever heard of Ag PhD, the Hefty Boys? They were in, they do a celebrity thing. So you had Hula Dowdy, you had Matt, you had Van Inkus, Matthews. And anyway, these guys won the soybean deal. It was done in South Dakota, all in the same dirt. This is what was neat. And so you had Hula, you had Dowdy, you had Matt, you had these other guys. And not only were we 5 bushels better on the same soil, we were also cheaper than all of them. And that's what, that was really cool. But he was the only one using the technologies that we have.
So you've heard us talk about the ABCs of agriculture, agronomy, biology, chemistry. You heard us talk about different products, but we always come back to a program approach. The next thing we're going to talk about, and I'm going to let Trey talk about it, is a honest-to-God program approach that we call the Agritech Acre.
So what we've done over the last 9 years is we've really, we spent a lot of time on product development, on programs of, how we're doing things, what we need to know about chemistry, biology, and agronomy, and we've been making recommendations for farmers. I mean, total recommendations. A lot of guys, they want they won't go to the field without, talking to one of our agronomists. And actually, we have just as many agronomists as we have salespeople, so that tells you anything. So what we want to do is come up with an idea of, because we are so customer focused, of how can we get our customers even more involved. And so we come up with Agritech Acre. Basically, it's a customized program based on, again, your soil test, your yield goals, your budget, all those different things, your tillage practices and all that. And basically, we put an entire program together for you. And guys that are using our program based on if there's 3 products, the 3 applications or more, they get into the program. With that, you get monthly newsletter, text and emails updates. So if we're seeing something in Mississippi or you're seeing something in North Carolina that hadn't gotten here, you get text and updates about it. We'll have destination meetings. I mean, our plan is to actually have a designated meeting where we have guys from all over the United States, Canada, who knows where, come together and talk about what we talked about here today, but you're talking about it with other farmers that are from all over the United States. Because at the end of the day, if we can all learn from each other, we'll all end up being better at what we do. Because we can take a nugget, like a guy from Virginia, I may take a nugget of something he did and share it with a guy in Iowa, that goes, I got something from that. I was able to implement that on my farm and be a better farmer. Apparel and all that. And so that's kind of what the Agritech Acre program is. Did you know this slide? Oh, way to go. So anyway, but that's what the Agritech Acre is. That's where guys, I would say 90% of our farmers end up going is to the Agritech Acre. Once they start trying our products, once they kind of get to knowing it, they go, all right, I'm in. This stuff really works. My soil's changing. My profitability on my farm's better. I want to know more. And so that's kind of where, at the end of the day, that's where we kind of end up going with basically almost all of our customers. With that, that's all we have. I know we went through a lot. Anybody have any questions at all on anything? Yes, sir.
So the folic force 8, you're saying it's gonna improve the metabolism of the plant. You want to tolerate herbicide, like the Roundup. and-
right, well, so
and
basically it makes your-
improve your wheat control.
It makes your plant healthier, and in that, it helps it metabolize any of the, and I think that's where we're getting the yield kick, to be honest with you. I think it's helping that plant metabolize and get back to growing faster, and that's where we're getting more of a yield kick than anything, when we apply the herbicide. Yeah.
Folks, we got lunch ready, so I know, or go ahead, Eddie, you got a question?
Yes, sir.
Is the Fulton Floors 8 the same thing as a surfactant, just?
Yeah, it will replace any surfactant you have. It runs about 90-something cents an acre, so it's pretty stinking cheap compared to LI 700, like $1.25.
So what's your use rate, 4 per 100 gallons?
8 ounces.
8 ounces per 100.
That's it. Sometimes we have guys who use 16 because maybe they want to do a little bit more foliar feeding with it. Maybe my plant's not quite that healthy. Maybe I got a little more stress. Maybe it's a little too dry. Pump a little bit, bump that rate up. That'll make that weed just a little bit healthier, gives the weed a little bit more energy, kills the weed faster.